Okay. So we are presenting on the topic of philosophical relationship between Marx and C.W.F. Hegel, especially on how Marx took Hegel ideas and turned into them upside down. My title of my presentation is Marx and Hegel from Idealism to Materialism. The central question I want to answer is this: did Marx simply reject Hegel, or did he do something more complex? My argument is that Marx did not throw away Hegel. Instead, he performed a critical intervention. He kept Hegel's method to change his foundation, moving from the ideas to material reality. To understand Marx's critique, we must need to understand what Hegel actually said. Hegel believed that reality is not made of matter; it is made of mind, or what he called Geist. For Hegel, history is the story of the mind or spirit gradually becoming aware of itself. Now, how does history move through the contradiction? Mark Haeckel's method, the famous, which is known as dialect, would like this is like this. You have a thesis, it produces its opposite or antithesis. And from the conflict between them come the synthesis, the higher unity. He called this propose effusion, which means the stabilization, which the contradiction are cancelled, but the preserve of the higher level. The goal of history for Hegel is the movement when the spirit achieves absolute self-knowledge. In simple terms, when the mind is fully understand itself, the history reaches its completion. When we believe this is happening through the modern rational state, this brings us to the second column, Hegel's theory of the state, found in his philosophical right. Hegel believed that uh, free, free will develops three stages. First, the absolute right, basic legal rights of the individuals. Then the morality, the inner life of conscience. Finally, the ethical life of ethical life, where the freedom becomes the real social institution. These institutions are family, civil society, and most importantly, the state. For Hegel, the state is the highest expression of ethical life, where he, where the particular interest of individuals are reconciliated with more individual universal interest of the community. And at the top of the state sides the monarch, who embodies this universality. In short, for Hegel, the idea comes first, and the rational is real, and the real is rational. Marx, sorry, sir, Marx, Marx critique of Hegel's philosophical of right. This begins. This brings us the heart of the presentation. Marx direct the critique of Hegel, founded in the critique of Hegel's philosophy of right, written in 1833. Marx identified four major problems with Hegel's system. First, the logical confusion. Marx argued that Hegel does something philosophical dishonest. It takes the real institution, the family, the state, and law, and force them to fit into the categories of the science of logic. Instead, the deriving of his i- ideas from the real political life, Hegel does the opposite. He starts with the abstract logical categories of the makes reality fit them. This produced what Marx called the Platonic dialect, where the real contradiction, where the real contradiction and conflict are dissolved by the imaginary physical, and it's like saying the poor of the rich are the reconciled with the ideas of unity with the actual changing anything. Right? The false of universal class. Hegel believed that the bureaucracy is natural. Universal class rises above the private interest, and the acts of God have all. Marx, Marx called this pure idealism. In reality, the bureaucrats pursue their own self-interest, and their dress up and their language are universality. The state becomes the private property, for the extremes cannot be mediated. Hegel's entire philosophy, sorry, Hegel's entire system of rights of belief that the contradiction can always resolve through the logical mediation. For Marx, but Marx argues that the fundamental conflicts rooted in the private property and the exploitation of the labor, and not logically contradiction. They are the real material antagonism that can't be thrown away, but must be abolished through the revolutionary practices. The 1844 manuscript. In the Economic and Philosophical manuscript of 1844, Marx takes the concept of alienation. For Hegel, the Frederick both used and keep the completely material and economic grounding. First, it took at the Hegel's limit. Hegel did recognize the something important, that labor is the central of the human self-development. This labor, humans express the realize the intercapabilities. This is genuine, philosophical instinct, but Hegel only recognized the abstract, mental labor. The labor through the consciousness for Hegel, the alienation is the problem in mind. You solve it by thinking correctly, by philosophically. Marx says this is not enough. Alienation is not a mental problem. It is a material one. It coexists in the real contradiction of under capitalism, and it can be cured by the philosophy alone. It must be abolished in practice. Marx then described the fourth dimension of alienated labor in capitalism. Alienated alienation from the product, alienation of the act of production, alienation from the species being, and the alienation of the matter being. Historical materialism. Historical materialism based on superstructure. By 1845, Marx had moved beyond the Hegel to develop his own philosophical position. In the in the thesis of Friedberg, Marx made a key criticism of Friedberg materialism. Even though the Friedberg brought the philosophy back to the art, to being the material reality. This materialism is not the passive or complementary. Friedberg saw the reality as something to observe and understood, not change. He asked the philosopher to think correctly and about the world, as they disagreed. He combined the Hegel's dynamic and the historical view of the change. Where material counted to produce the new concept, the philosophical practice. Theory and the practice must be united. And the express of the famous thesis 11, the philosopher have only interpreted the real various ways. The point, however, it changed it. In German ideology, 1845-46, the co-written with Angel, Marx developed his into a full theory, historical materialism. The central argument is simple, but radical. Material contradiction determine the consciousness, and the other way around it is not ideas that derive from history. It is the economic organization of society. This is captured in the personal psychological model, which you can't see the right. The economic base consists of consists of two things: the force of production, technology, tools, or labor power. The relation of production, who owns what, the class relation of capitalism, On the top of this base sits the superstructure. Everything else, the law, politics, and religion, philosophy, culture, and ideology. All of this Marx argues that they ultimately determined by the economic base. The excess of the justified that means the law of the ideas, which Marx is a part of the full European illusion. In conclusion, Marx did not simplify the account and Hegel. He collectively interpret him, keep the method basis in the foundation. Contribution. He put contribution for his intervention. The dialectical mechanism. Marx described the Hegel's dialectical method. The ideas are the contradiction derived from the historical development, from the from its idealistic scale. They applied it not only the contradiction of the social society. Historical mechanism. Marx established the material contradiction, the economic organization of society, and the real driving force of the history and the consciousness of the existence. Not the other way around. The alienation, by the counting alienation in the core of the condition of the capitalist leader. Marx transferred from it the philosophical abstraction into the philosophy and convict problem. One is the determined by the economic and other is determined by the political situation. And finally, Marx permanently changed the role of the theory itself. Philosophy content or understand by the world. Its task and the task is the revolution. It's not by the transformation. To quote Marx one final time, the philosophers have only the interpreted in the world. The point is to change to be changed. Thank you.